Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy game day, happy Wednesday, and happy birthday, Steve Rawls. Nice work, sir. And a belated happy Mother's Day to all you mothers and guardians and dads who do double duty. Happy Mother's Day to you all. Thank you. We literally would not be here if it was for you. So let's get started. We want to start with the belief system that the first ALC for Keller Williams came up with. The Y4C2Ts, win-win or no deal. Integrity, do the right thing. Customers, always come first. Commitment in all things. Communication, seek first to understand. Creativity, ideas before results. Teamwork, together, everyone achieves more. Trust starts with honesty. Equity, opportunities for all, and success results through people. Now, we will come back to that in a minute, but first of all, everyone who volunteered, give yourself a round of applause. Again, the play of the week is please let us know anything that you see from your colleagues that just stands out. You know, it can be work related, it can be personal, it can be, you know, just something that you think is special that they do or have done. And a quick reminder, these are hot mics, so people will hear you online as well as in the recording. So when you're talking about how good I look today, everyone will hear that.
Listen, you look handsome, Jim.
Thank you. See, there it is.
That's a great color on you.
Oh, thank you. I probably shouldn't have opened up to that, but thanks. So, got to do Red Day. It's respect here. So since 2009, the tire company sets aside a day called Red Day to renew, energize, and donate within the communities we serve. We were able to start at the Hardware House. Should have brought my specs. Where we assembled, organized, and tested items for the Heartland Outlet Store, organized and restocked items in the community giveaway area. We created blankets for families directly affected by suicide at the Duck Cup Memorial in New Prague. And then we wrapped up the day with Feed My Starving Children and boxed over 21,000 meals for kids in Honduras. So give yourselves a round of applause. Our partners in Marshall will be hosting their Red Day this week. They got rain last week. And we also hit our goal for KW Cares donations. Thanks for getting that going, Toddy.
Actually, we got $111.
Nice. And thank you, Tricia and Michelle, I was gonna say Hoagie. And Hoagie for putting all that together. Thank you so much. And speaking of giving, last week, I had said I lost my iPhone and I was having trouble. So I was given this beautiful gift of an iPhone. And thank you, Kate, for such a thoughtful item. And it's also my first mobile phone. So, thank you. We're always looking to just do special things for one another, and I love it. That's so awesome. And let's welcome Samantha and Leanne to the squad. And coming up next is Toddy. All right, we got that one. I've got the baby.
No, we can skip that. Okay, short announcement today. One thing that is going to be coming on June 1st is we were at Mega Leadership Camp, and they were talking about how Zoom is a great thing, but it can also hurt market centers a little bit. So we want to really have everybody super engaged today. This room is super full, and that's so cool. So going forward, starting on June 1st, the things that will always remain on Zoom will be every team meeting, still be on Zoom. The broker boot camps will still be on Zoom. Then we'll have one monthly highlighted event that will be on Zoom. So that could be, you know, special class or something. And then all of the ALC meetings will remain on Zoom. On the calendar, anything with a blue star means that it's on Zoom. Okay? So, yeah, our hope is just that everybody comes in more, and we love to see all of your faces, so come to me, that's more. The next thing is Google My Business with Shannon Steers on Friday, and it's free. It's free. So when people ask me if it costs money, it's free. Okay? So come on Friday and come to the class. It'll be really great. That class is going to be on Zoom. I had to check with Shannon, so that will be on Zoom. Then don't forget to sign up for your headshots. There was a link to sign up for your headshot in the Winning Wednesday text. So go on there and click sign up. It's on May 30th. It'll be a really fun day. That's it.
Thank you. Remember earlier we spoke about the ALC? Well, we have special things that special leaders of the ALC do. Let's hear about health.
So if you guys notice on your tables, we have a pickleball flyer. So this event is this coming Tuesday. So next Tuesday, we'll meet at the pickleball courts from 10 to 12 will be actual pickleball. And then at noon, we thought we could just stay for lunch since there's lunch served at this venue.
Yeah, and we have our superstar pickleball coach that's gonna be there helping us out, so he's really excited about it. So I guess the whole idea is just to get moving and have some fun. I know pickleball is a craze. I've never done it either. So this will be really fun. So just come on out and $10. And how many courts do we have?
2 courts for 2 hours. Well, technically we've got 3 if we overflow. But yeah, for $10. The big thing is it's happy hour because pickleball makes you happy. And then we'll, at noon, right, at the stroke of noon, we'll have lunch, and then we could probably have a cocktail there too as well. But it's gonna be super, super fun. Greg goes to one of these places up in Maple Grove. I've never actually been to an indoor pickleball.
I was here yesterday checking it out.
Is it good?
Very nice.
Are you gonna be able to be there? I know everybody's kind of busy. If you can make it, please make it. It's super fun, and then invite people. Bring your spouses, bring people. It's just a really cool thing.
Or even like a Cobra.
It's not gonna be like an intense lesson. Last night I was teaching for the city of Prior Lake, and that was pretty intense. So we're gonna dial it back from that.
Yeah.
But I've got all the gear, all the balls. Just show up. You can come late, you don't have to be there right on time.
Yeah.
Just show
Also,
up.
co-brokes, invite co-brokes if you have somebody that you'd like to introduce to the group. It's a fun way to do that. And then just, I'd like to note to Olivia, this was not my idea for happy hour at 10 a.m. in the morning, but I love it.
That's awesome. Brian's married and he's courting all these people.
No, don't
Oh, there it is. Oh, let's welcome up Brian Drake.
Setting up the music.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, it was.
All right.
Yes. All right, so this morning, we had a NAPCAsh certification class. And we had great participation, thank you if you were here. If you weren't able to make it, we have daily Zoom certifications you can jump on, or you can jump on those even to get refreshed with the program. Mullen was our presenter. She knows her tests, but she grinded through it quickly. So if you have questions, come to me, you'll have her email, Drake, and we can help you with any of those questions.
Yes, and speaking of the NAPCAsh training, something that came up was, who's this program for? And so I just wanted to speak on that a little bit about, who this NAPCAsh program might be used for. So we're seeing a big niche for relocation buyers, buyers that are out of state, they want to come in and move here in Minnesota, and what better way to allow them to just get here and then sell later. That's what NAPCAsh can be used for. I mean, even bigger is, we're seeing move up buyers, even move down buyers, really any buyer who has a home to sell and they want to be able to make a non-contingent offer. And so, talk to Brian and I will help, get you set up for an online certification, like you said. Otherwise, maybe we'll, since we had such a great turnout for this in-person one, maybe we'll bring that back, somewhere down the road in the future, because I think those of you that showed up would agree that you got a lot out of it. Now you have a tool in your back pocket, automatically certified now, and really just gotta send us your flyer so we can get you hooked up with this program. And now I want to talk about our flyer too. This flyer is just a great way to push this program and give your buyers an idea of what the power is behind the NAF cash offer. Being able to present a cash off program, it's very easy. There's just 5 steps to it, and it kind of goes over that. So if you guys want something to market and push out to your customers, let us know, and we'll get your information on there so you can post it online.
What the? Oh, how'd you get that? This is from Feed My Starving Children for Red Day. Mariah wanted to know somebody from Table 5, because Table 5 did 23 boxes and Table 3 did 22 boxes. And so she just wanted to shake somebody's hand from Table 5. So I got a selfie with her, and it might be the record for Region 5.
One of our core values is integrity. Like, you might be lying right now.
It's right there.
Olivia, are you saying that he didn't get a letter from the Pope?
Still checking to see if it's a record.
Table 3 was rather slow, I'm just saying.
Who was doing that?
I told you we were coming back to these.
Way more people.
Integrity.
No.
Do the right thing.
Teamwork makes dream work.
We're blessed, not just at this company, but at this brokerage in many ways. We've got such an engaged broker with Melissa, and then we also have one of the best in the business that we get access to, and he's a dynamic speaker. And this is just one step of many to keep us ahead of the game. And at leadership camp, Jason Abrams spoke of a bunch of great opportunities we're going to have to share with y'all to keep you even further to grow your market share. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Greg Hartos.
Anyway, thank you for the warm welcome from a bunch of people that don't want to see me. So I appreciate it. I always love coming down to Burnsville and seeing the growth that you guys have had down here. And I've been working with Olivia for since you were over in Lakeville, so that's 12 years ago?
Before I started calling you Cupcake.
Yeah, before she started calling me Cupcake. She's the only one in the room that can do that, by the way. Long story, and I'm not going to share it. She probably will at some point. I appreciate being here and helping you understand the changes. Keep in mind that in terms of Minnesota real estate, we've probably been doing 85% or 90%, or we've been required to do that with our buyer rep contracts, listing contracts. So there's going to be very little change here. And so hope to cover that today. I've got a lot of time for questions. If we get to the end, and I've been known to yabber, I think I get paid by the minute. But my intent is to try to put you at ease, help you understand what's going to change, see what the forms changes are going to be in Minnesota, so that we can tailor some training for that, because there's going to be some confusion moving forward. So I wanted to also talk to you about how I see the industry maybe changing a little bit. Now, first, do we have any guests here today, Jamie, or are these all your people?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I have a guess.
Okay, from other brokers. So when I talk today about commissions, I'm going to use an imaginary number for a listing commission and an imaginary number for a co-op payout, because we can't talk about commissions together with our competitors. We're certainly free to do that amongst ourselves here at this brokerage, but not amongst our competitors. We
It's
can
not a
never,
licensed person, if that makes it any different.
not licensed?
No.
Okay. She's gonna get licensed here, right?
Yeah.
So she'll need to know this anyway.
There you
Because
go.
she's not going to any place else, are you?
That's right. No.
Sign that one up. So we're gonna kind of talk about how, look, there's 22,000 agents in the state of Minnesota. I care about the 350 in Maple Grove, the 200 down here, what's the number at?
200.
And I was just at Roseville's KW office yesterday. So those are the people I care about being highly educated and prepared to make these changes that are gonna go on in the industry, make you a little bit smarter than everybody else. I'd encourage you not to talk to other people about it because there's too many crazy people out there that don't know what they're talking about. And we'll go through that. So nationwide settlements. We're gonna skip through some of this. You all know we've been sued. Those lawsuits really started back in 2018-19, which means they were working on this even prior to that. Okay, so this has been going on for a while. And again, we've been doing things right in Minnesota. I mean, we've had buyer rep contracts since 1992-ish. Right? Now, have we all given them out enough, soon enough? Have we all explained them enough to people? I think that's where we all failed. And we're all gonna need to do a better job moving forward. So the settlements were a nationwide settlement. And some states, depending on their licensing laws, their practices or whatever, were the problems for all of us, right? And in moving forward with solutions, different states might, and different realtor associations, different MLSs, different brokerages, might take a different path in how they're gonna interpret the lawsuit and how they're gonna move forward. Some people will be a little bit more aggressive and maybe testing where that line in the sand is. And in other brokerages, other marketplaces, other MLSs, they might wanna take a step back from the line and see what happens to everybody else that's willing to take a little bit more risk. So I happen to be on the board of governors for the RMLS here, so I know what's going on with your forms. I'm also on the executive committee for the Minnesota Association of Realtors, so we'll be looking at what the forms changes are coming forward in terms of how the purchase agreement and the listing contract are changing. So this is all fresh stuff. It's subject to change. If it does change, we'll certainly let you know that. But you can kind of book what we're going to talk about today. Zillow's response. Does anybody know who Zillow is? Is anybody a Zillow agent? You can put your hand up high. You can be proud of that. Zillow did put out a response a little over a week ago on what they called a touring agreement. Keep in mind, Zillow is concerned about Zillow. They aren't concerned about you, the real estate agent, that you are an income source for them. So Zillow put out this touring agreement, which they would like to have all agents use that are a Zillow agent or anybody that gets a lead off of Zillow. And basically what it is, does anybody have a bird cage at home? I wouldn't even put this in the bottom of my bird cage, okay? Basically it's Zillow's way of having you still have no value to your time, efforts, and money, drop everything you're doing to go show an uncommitted buyer a property and to pretend that it's in compliance with state law. It's not. Zillow makes no representations as to the legal validity or adequacy of any provision of this form in any specific transaction. So what they're saying is, we don't have any liability, we'd like you to use this because then it helps us maintain Zillow's system of sending out leads, getting referral fees, or getting you to pay to be a premier agent, but we should not be using it. In fact, the state of Virginia Realtors Association came out last week and said, we do not believe in Virginia this complies with Virginia law. Now, if the Minnesota Department of Commerce or the Minnesota Realtors came out and said that same thing, because I don't think it's in compliance, we have an obligation to give agency and at some point in time put somebody under a representation agreement, right? And that's what the lawsuit's all about. So Zillow is a broker. They are not your broker. You should not listen to them. You should listen to Melissa, right? So, any questions on that? Stay off the internets. I think last time I was here, I told you stay off the internets. How many of you have broken my rule and you've been on the internet? Other than MLS access and email. Those two are permitted. You've been someplace else? I'm not gonna ask where you've been, Jason. But stop reading lab coat agents, stop reading Inman. Does anybody know what Inman is?
Yeah.
By the way, you guys all pay for that subscription, whether you use it or not, through the Minnesota Association of Realtors. But stay off the internet. They're speaking to all sorts of different audiences in all sorts of different states, and everybody's got to weigh in with their opinion, including some people that just found out they're being sued, now that we're well down that road. So stay off the internet in terms of your resources for how to react in your business. Can you make me that promise?
Yes.
Anybody want to not make that promise? Take names. Okay. So what's going to change? So the big change for everybody, as part of the lawsuit, is compensation is no longer going to be listed on the MLS sheet. Period. Is that going to change your life a little bit? I mean, if you're a listing agent, does anybody know what this is? It's a phone. If you're a listing agent, you're going to start getting phone calls. I'd advise you to answer them because it's probably going to be, hey, Chad, I'm calling on your listing on 1234 Main Street. What kind of compensation are you offering on that agreement? Because it's not going to be on MLS. They are wiping out the commission fields on MLS. When? It's probably going to be, and we'll get to a slide, around mid-August to mid-September. And those dates are dictated by the settlements in the lawsuit. 150 days after the settlement was finalized. And just last week, the judge agreed to the first 3 settlements, the KW, the Remax, and the Anywhere lawsuit. The NER will be next, and then the other brokers that will follow. So compensation is going away. And how's that going to change your life? We're going to talk about that. What is your office? What is KW going to do about that? Because on our own website, we can list all of the properties in MLS, right? And we can have Edina's, Coldwell Bankers, Century 21's listings on our website. On our listings, meaning KW preferred, somebody will be able to see the compensation we are offering to a cooperating broker on our listings. But you will not be able to go to the KW Burnsville website and see what Edina is offering for compensation. We can only list our own broker's compensation. So there's going to be a couple options. We're going to talk about how do I find out what somebody else is offering, right? We'll talk about that in a minute. So the lawsuit is requiring the MLSs to remove all of that stuff. Whether it's a association-owned MLS, which ours here is, the Realtor Regional MLS is owned actually by the Minnesota Association, or Minneapolis Association of Realtor members, the 6 SPAR members, and Rochester. So that's who owns our MLS. In some parts of the country, it's broker-owned. There might be one broker, big broker that owns it, a couple of brokers together, make a profit off of it, or it might be a privately held MLS. But they're all going to have to comply to the terms of this lawsuit. Yes, young lady?
So the fields are going away. Can we put it in agent notes?
We'll get there in a minute. Did you read my slides already? You got ESP? Okay, so is everybody clear on that? So that's the part of your life that's going to change. And again, the lawsuit prohibits the MLS from even making let's say a side website where they list all of the properties, and maybe it just has the address, the MLS number, and they offer up compensation. So MLSs can't attempt to do some end around there. You as an agent cannot use MLS to get cute. In other words, you can't have 3 apples in a picture on the counter indicating, or 2.5 apples, or 4 apples, or indicating anything else. At your listing, you can have a sign up that says the seller is excited to offer the buyer broker compensation of 3%. So on the property, you can have stuff. In your flyers, you can have stuff. Just nowhere on MLS, not in supplements, not in a secret code. I listed the house at $499,027. So don't get cute, because there will be enforcement, and it's probably not going to be pretty. I hope it's not pretty. I hope for anybody that breaks the rules, it's not pretty. Brokers can still offer commissions on their own listings via their own websites, we talked about that. Other non-MLS channels. Don't try to get cute, we covered that already. I don't know if, how many people think Gary Keller was excited about writing a $70 million check on behalf of all of us? Was anybody in Vegas? I was not there, but I watched the recording. He kind of made it clear, I did it this time, I will not be doing it again. I don't, and we'll talk about this as we get a little bit deeper in here, I think it's gonna be individual enforcement next, which means you and you and you and you. And if an office is not in compliant, right, there's too many of you doing the wrong thing, then I think it's gonna fall on the office. So that's how I think enforcement's gonna happen in the future. Concessions, at this time in our MLS, the regional MLS, there are no plans to add a concessions line into our MLS system. Now, when I list a property, right, I sat down with the seller, I said, your house is worth $500,000. Yes, that sounds great. Would you like to compensate a buyer broker? Sure. Would you like to offer any other concessions? Well, I know my carpet's really bad. It's probably $5,000 to replace it. So yeah, I guess that if I could get my $500,000, I'd be willing to offer some concessions. Now, so you say to your seller, okay, I'm gonna list your house at 8%, right? We'd all be excited about that. And we're gonna offer buyer broker compensation of 3%. And I'm gonna use that number because then the math's easy, right? So my seller says, I think my house is gonna sell for $500. I'm gonna be willing to offer a buyer broker compensation of 3%. Or $15,000, right? And that, remember that $5,000 carpet allowance? So when you go into MLS, in the agent remarks, we can put in there, seller offers concessions of $20,000. Does the math work so far for you? The seller nor the listing broker can say, you know, if the buyer comes in and says, great, I'll take the $20,000 for carpet and siding. The buyer is allowed to do that, to use up whatever concessions the seller's offering. We can't say, hey, maybe you misheard me, $15,000 of that was intended for you to pay your buyer broker. So the seller can't condition the offering of that concession amount to be used solely or mainly as buyer broker compensation. We good on that? So, one of the ways around how do I publicize what my seller might be willing to offer for a buyer broker commission is to put that into your MLS sheet under agent remarks. So $500,000 house, let's say my seller says the carpet's fine, I'm not paying for anything else. But let's advertise that there's either $15,000 or 3% buyer concessions. And the buyer can use that however they want. Now, if the buyer's working with an agent that's willing to work for 1%, then the buyer has 2% left to play with, right? Question?
Could you put in the agent remarks that, seller is offering, buyer concessions, see website? Can you offer it someplace else, to direct them to someplace else to look?
Is there anybody in here that wouldn't sell their house to me right now for the right price? I would argue, you know, I'll give you $1 million for your house. Are you willing to sell? I think most of us would, right? So, the concession, and you know, you're trying to use the MLS to say, go look someplace else to see what I'm offering, right? I think that's gonna be problematic.
Okay.
You should either put a dollar amount or a percentage. If you're gonna put concessions on agent remarks, you should use a dollar amount or a percentage. Now, the hard part about a dollar amount is, what if we get less than 500 and you said 15,000, right? Or what if you get 520 and you're paying 50? So I think for most of us, we're probably used to working off of percentages, especially in terms of compensation, right? And so if the price is higher or lower than maybe what somebody anticipates, the percentage seems to work better. I don't know if everybody in town is gonna do this. It's an option that we should probably discuss as a group And, you know, some of you might say, that's smart, that's gonna eliminate some phone calls for me. And in some cases where and we're gonna talk about commissions, but, and in other cases, you might say, that's not smart for me to do. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
Does it have to be in the agent remarks, or can it be in the?
I don't
public
think you can
remarks?
put it in the public remarks, and this is all new. Now, look, but it makes sense, because in theory, I as a buyer's agent am supposed to have a conversation with my buyer about compensation, right? I mean, that's what part of this lawsuit is about. Buyers didn't, you know, felt that they were buying a house and they didn't know where the commissions were coming from, and the agent never told them how it worked or what they expected. And so, part of this lawsuit is sellers should pay their agents, buyers should pay their agents, right? And there needs to be discussion on both of them, right? On the seller's end, we always did a net sheet, right? Mr. Seller, here's your list price, here's a probable sales price, here's the compensation you're agreeing to pay, here's that dollar amount. I don't know that many agents had that same conversation with the buyer. Hey, when you buy a house, you understand you're paying the price here, and that's including my compensation, which the seller is offering, which matches or exceeds or is less than what you and I negotiated for. By the way, these slides are available to you guys, right? Jason? Yeah, so you don't have to take pictures, you can if you want, but make sure I'm in them. Make sure you tell people where you got them from, but, so we'll see how some of this stuff plays out. I mean, would it be nice if everybody did it? Sure. Are there gonna be some people that don't? Yeah. The decision not to create a concession field is going to be, it might change down the road at the MLS. We might see how other parts of the country are doing it, that the attorneys aren't having a fit with it, and we might adopt it here. But I appreciate that the RMLS doesn't want to spend any more money on attorney's fees trying something. Let somebody else try it, and we'll see how it goes. We good with that? Changes in the listing contract. This language, I don't know, other than the people on the forums committee or the people on the board of directors at the Minnesota Association and Realtors and the Maple Grove office and the Roseville office, I don't know anybody's being trained on this right now. This language, there's a 99% chance that this exact language, without any additional changes, is going to be in the new listing contract. Now, Mike, if you remember, forms come out on August 1st, right? That's when kind of they've had the last year to create updates, to get them to the printer or to get them to the technology company that does our forms for us. And so, will there be possibly other changes in the listing contract? Yes, but this is gonna be the part that relates to the change in the business, right? So, let's read what the changes are. And this was just approved in April of 2024. So the language will be added if the seller agrees to pay buyer's broker's compensation directly to buyer's broker, then the seller's obligation to pay broker's compensation, listing broker's compensation, as specified on line 119 to 120, shall be reduced by the amount paid up to blank dollars or blank % of the sales price. So let's just walk through a listing contract. Right now, the listing contract that you have in place set under commissions, right? It says a seller agrees to pay listing broker a retainer fee of blank dollars. Right now, most of you are not collecting a retainer fee, and that's fine, but some agents are having sellers pay a retainer fee. We collect the check now, we run into the office, we have it cashed, and once it clears, then we pay you as an agent your split, so it's kind of a prepaid commission. But most of you have zero in there. Then the next line goes on to read, plus, right, a commission of blank %, and let's just say 8% for today's example, or blank dollars, whichever is greater. So let's say $500,000 house, sellers are agreeing to pay an 8% commission, that's 40 grand. So in the first box, you would put 8%, the next box you might put, or $30,000, whichever is greater, right? And then plus a buyer, plus $499, which is your BAC down here, is that correct?
Correct.
So that's what our current agreement talks about commission. So this is gonna come into play afterwards. So what this means is, if in the 8% that my seller said list my house at, in that agreement, I authorized, let's say 3% to be paid to a buyer broker, right? So the seller is saying, Greg, I'm gonna give you a bunch of money as the broker, and I want you to share that with the buyer broker. That's how things have normally flowed in the past. Well, with the changes in the lawsuit and in the purchase agreement you're gonna see in a minute, the buyer and the buyer's agent could be asking for that compensation to flow directly from the seller to them. And so when the purchase agreement comes in, and let's just say this agent sold his value to his buyer at, let's say, a 4% value, and the buyer agreed to that, right? The seller might be paying part of their commission, and this is where it gets confusing, might be paying part of the commission to the listing broker to give to the buyer broker, and there might be some that goes from the seller directly to the buyer broker. And we'll talk about how we're already doing that, how that'll change. So this language is gonna get inserted. So the seller shouldn't pay me 8% and that other agent 4%, should he?
No.
Not when he said Greg paid 3, so that's kind of how the cups are moving in that little game where, where's the ball under it? Question?
So I know lenders are coming out with concession limits. If the seller broker pays the buyer's broker directly, does that count towards that buyer's concession limit, or is it still separate?
Keep in mind in the lawsuit, an agent now can only get what they contracted for. So if I went under contract with a buyer at a 3% commission, right, Mr. Buyer, that's what my services are worth, and the buyer says, gotcha. And I go to Lennar, right, and Lennar has a $5,000 bonus on top of my 3% commission, I cannot accept the $5,000 commission, or bonus, excuse me. I would have to say to the client, look, they're offering a bonus, I'm not entitled to it because you and I agreed to 3%, and so what would you like to do with that? Now, you know, do you wanna go ask Lennar to have that money or credit or price reduction to go to you? Now, there might be a buyer that says, Greg, you've done a fantastic job. If there's a bonus, Greg, I want you to get it, then I could amend my buyer rep agreement before the incident happens, not after. So it's not one of those deals where, oops, Greg, I collected a $5,000 bonus, I wanna pretend we're 60 days ago and have my buyer approve that.
So our team has a X%, we'll reduce it down to Y% in the, if the percentage is lower than X, we'll go to Y. Right, so can I just say we were gonna put a buyer broker together at 100%, but if they're offering less, we'll go down to a baseline of Y.
You have to name a number.
Yeah.
You
So
can't give a
100.
range, you can't say, we'll accept whatever the builder or the MLS is offering. You have to put a number in there.
And then I cannot adjust that number.
You,
So if I go
you can
100%,
accept less,
I cannot go
but you
down
can't
to
put it,
3%.
broker will accept 2 to 3%, you can't have that.
You can't have that.
Right.
Can I do an amendment to the buyer broker or something?
We'll get to that in a minute. So my advice would be to put 3% in your buyer rep agreements. Would you all be happy to get 3% today?
We want the $5,000, so I don't want
What?
$5,000.
Well, I think that will eliminate some of the bonuses, right? I mean, look, I don't know what you guys all sign your buyer rep contracts with. I might be offering more than what you're under contract for, right? So, in some cases.
If you have them sign, you can take less though too, right? You can make a modification.
Well, I would not write that in there, 3% or less, because then it's like, well, what is your contract? Will you take $1? Well, no, I'd never take $1.
No, what I'm saying is if they're only offering, I write them all for 3.5. But if I can modify those if I want to take it.
Well, look, if you went and showed me a house where there was only 3% compensation, we have a compensation disclosure, why don't you write up my offer? Hey, Greg, keep in mind, we had a 3.5% agreement, yes, seller's offering 3%. Okay, and you might say, Greg, where's the extra half? Or you might say, Greg, I'm willing to waive that.
Right.
Right? You can always take less
Okay, that's what you're trying to.
of your money. Keep in mind, some of this is the brokerage's money. I always say you can spend your money, not mine. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Sorry, if you take less, we have to amend it, or does it not?
Oh, yeah.
I would always acknowledge it in writing. Hey, Greg, the house you're interested in buying, right? The seller's offering this compensation. We already pre-agreed that my services are worth this.
Yeah.
So you could either ask Greg to write a check for this, put it into the purchase agreement, or you could say, Greg, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'll go to my broker, she's gonna kill me, but I'll go to FAT for you and, I'll get that waived. Now, on the other hand, Greg, could you possibly send me a buyer or seller in the next 3 months here so I can make my crabby broker happy? I always say blame the broker for everything. But yes, you can take less.
Hey, Greg, real quick. Hey, just a reminder again, because of the hot mics, I know these are topics that you really wanna like discuss live time chat. And these are hot mics, people online are trying to hear. And even sitting across the room when, we can't hear with the side conversations, so please, if you have to whisper. But
And we're recording it, right, for the people that couldn't be here, so when there's a lot of side conversations, thank you, Jamie.
thank you all.
Pretend we're in church.
No, don't do that.
If you are a Zoom user, please make sure to identify yourself because I am moving people.
Okay, yeah, if you're a Zoomer, please ID yourself on the screen so we don't kick you out because, you know, we don't want to share this good stuff with other brokers, right? Isn't this worth $1 million so far?
Yeah.
That's what Olivia said she was gonna give me. So, she didn't say when though. Yes.
I have a quick clarification question. So did you say if it was gonna be more compensation, you can make the amendment before the purchase agreement is written?
Yes, so I'll give you an example. I go to, whether it's a regular listing or a builder or whatever, right? And I noticed on MLS that the listing agent is trying, and the seller are trying to motivate a transaction to happen, right? So there's a bonus on it. So I should turn to my buyer before we're walking up the steps, right? And say, hey, just wanna let you know, and I should do this on every listing, by the way, that I'm showing, right? Remember, we signed an agreement at 3% for my services. This one's 2.5%. So let's go look at the house, and if you like it, I just need to let you know, Megan, that there might be a little additional compensation coming my broker's way. Blame it on the broker, not you. Never say me, it's about my broker. To fulfill the terms of the contract, this house is not offering enough, right? And then the house next door, hey, Megan, just wanna remind you that our agreement again is 3%. And look, I get it, you're not gonna do this 100 times, but on this house, the compensation offered by the listing broker and or the seller meets what we had pre-agreed to, so let's go look at the house. I think I should remind them up front that there might be, if there is gonna be a shortfall, right? Then I go to the house next door to that and I go, hey, Megan, on this one, they're actually offering more compensation than what you and I agreed to. And in fact, there's a $3,000 bonus. And she goes, oh, you're lucky, Greg. And I go, well, let's go look at the house first, but I wanted to let you know that before we went in the door, right? I think she's gonna appreciate my honesty. Need some money here, don't need any money there, getting too much there, right? So when she all of a sudden at the end of the day comes back and says, Greg, I wanna go for door number 3, and I go, awesome, well, remember there's more compensation offered than we negotiated. And she might say, Greg, you've done a fantastic job. Right, you fulfilled all my expectations, I really appreciate working with you. By the way, that's never happened to me. And she might say, Greg, I'm ready to write an offer, but I'd really like you, Greg, to keep the extra compensation and that bonus. I should finalize that agreement with her on this house before I write the PA. Would you agree to that?
Yeah.
I shouldn't, because here's what's gonna happen. I'm not gonna tell her that. And then 3 weeks from now, I'm going to closing, and then compliance kicks out, and I'll get to you in a second. Compliance kicks out and goes, Greg, you were only supposed to get 3%. Looks like you're getting 3.5 and 2,500. Did you have Megan's pre-approval to do this? And I'm gonna go, oops. So you need to do it before the PA. We have a compensation disclosure, spell it out, right?
That compensation disclosure would cover, you don't have to go back and amend the buyer rep.
That's a disclosure. We do need to amend the buyer rep agreement. And I would make it specific to this property, because if this deal doesn't go together, right, and we're back looking at homes next week, it would be unfair for Megan now to have an inflated cost and a bonus that was only eligible for one property.
So doesn't the compensation disclosure at the time, you're supposed to present that before you write a purchase agreement?
Every time you write a purchase
Right,
agreement for
they
a
know
buyer.
what the commission's being paid and that kind
And
of
you should remind, that form doesn't say, remember, we contracted for 3 and this is how I'm gonna get it or not gonna get it.
Right.
So some things will change. So then the language regarding the retainer fee and co-op broker compensation in our current listing contract, where the seller lists with us, authorizes us to pay out so much to a buyer broker, right? That's not gonna change. I'm gonna recommend that you list every property moving forward at your normal commission. And the reason for that is, and I know there's some agents that would go, I'm just gonna list properties at, just to pick a number, 3%. I'm only worried about me. I'm gonna offer no compensation to another agent at another company. In fact, I'm not even gonna offer compensation to another agent at my company if they sell my listing. So I'm encouraging you to continue listing your properties at a full commission, because look, if you're taking your Sunday to have an open house and a buyer walks in the door and you're doing both sides, don't you deserve to get paid on both sides? Or if somebody from the office is having your listing open on Sunday and a buyer walks in and they choose not to enter into buyer broker agreement where that buyer's obligation and they're expecting you to share your listing commission, it should still be there. We good with that? Any questions? So, none?
Clear as mud.
I'm sorry.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud. That's why we're gonna do more training. This is the changes in the PA. Now again, there might be other changes on taxes or personal property or somewhere else in the PA, but this is the language as it relates to the lawsuit and the changes we're gonna have to make, okay? So, and again, this was just approved at the end of April. So if you remember the purchase agreement, there's a couple of boxes in there, right? One is where the agents declare which side of the fence they're on, right? Greg Hartos, Keller Williams represents the seller. Joe Blow, Edina Realty represents the buyer. That box is in there, right? Then the next box says, does dual agency apply or not? Okay? So then you either check yes it does, because we're both at the same brokerage, or I'm the only agent on both sides, or no it does not. Well, immediately below that, this is gonna get inserted. And there's gonna be a heading there, big black heading that says seller's contribution to buyer's broker's compensation. This is where the buyer and or the buyer broker are looking to get their compensation clarified when they're asking for a direct payment from the seller. And depending on which broker you're working with as a listing broker, right, and their offer of compensation, which might be 0, or maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, this is where you're gonna say, they offered something here, they need something else to fulfill the buyer's obligation to me, to my brokerage, this is what we'll put in. So, from a listing agent standpoint, you better look close at this and make sure you got it right in your net sheet, and I'll explain that on the next slide. So this is the buyer's agent, buyer and buyer's agent asking for compensation out of the offer price outside of what you might have offered on MLS. You good with that? Or not on MLS, and there are other alternative options. So line 426 is gonna say seller is or is not contributing to buyer's broker's compensation at closing. If the answer is, seller agrees to pay buyer's broker's compensation at closing blank % or blank dollars. You better make sure both those boxes aren't filled in, and I guarantee you some agents will fill in both. So it's confusing as mud, right? So what this says is the buyer is asking in their purchase agreement for the seller to compensate their agent directly. And it's either a % or a dollar amount, and it's always figured on the gross selling price. Not the net price after seller paid closing costs or whatever, but it's the gross selling price. And then to clarify, this says seller's contribution to buyer broker compensation is in addition to any contributions to buyer's closing costs paid at closing by seller. So remember, in our purchase agreement, seller paid closing costs, right? There might be a dollar amount there, or a percentage, and there might be a dollar amount or percentage here. It's plus, not, right? It's a combination of both of those equals something. It's not one or the other. And an agent might put 1% in here and 1% in seller paid closing costs. Well, what is that to you in your net sheet? It's 2%, right? 1% in this column, 1% in that column. This is where we're gonna do some training because there's confusion that's gonna happen. So be aware, beware, and caution. So if the seller's offer of compensation from the listing broker to a buyer broker is 2%, and the PA calls for the buyer broker compensated, let's say 3%, because there will be some agents out there going, I got a 3% buyer rep agreement, I'm gonna put 3% in there, right? seller is actually authorizing a 5% commission in that case. So as a listing agent, when you receive these offers, you go, hey Greg, are you aware that I offered you 2% buyer broker compensation from my brokerage to yours? Yes. Well, Greg, I noticed in the PA you're asking for 3%. Well, yeah, because that's the agreement I have in place with my buyer. Well, Greg, it's not 3% plus 2% equals 5%, is it? Well, no, I just wanted to make sure I got my full 3. So you're gonna be working with agents that are gonna have no clue, right? And whether this is a brand new agent or an agent that's been doing this for 22 years and hasn't done a purchase agreement in the last year, it's gonna throw them off. So the same would be true, which can be confusing. I offered 2%, and in this agreement they asked for 2%. I better clarify, do you really mean, because now that offer is 4, right? You asked 2 in the PA, I offered 2, so it's really 4%. I'll get to you in a minute. I see you waving. So you need to understand. So as a listing agent, again, pick up your phone, call that agent on the other end and say, hey Greg, were you aware I was already offering you 2%? Yes. You put 3% in your PA? Yes. What's 3 plus 2? When I was in school, it was still a new math, I have no idea, but it was 5. So Greg, right? Now keep in mind, Greg's not supposed to collect more than Greg is contracted for. So if my contract was for 3, you might need to have that conversation. So Greg, what I'm gonna do, actually Greg, can you clean up your purchase agreement, send it back the right way? I'm offering you 2, you want a total of 3, put in 1 and send me a new PA, or at a minimum, you better counter it out, right? I don't wanna have a problem after a PA signed. It's too late. So confirm with the buyer's broker before presenting offer, get the language corrected before, right? Presenting any agreement, do your net sheet the right way, and if you make a mistake, who do you think should pay for that mistake? Do you think you should go to your seller and say, thanks for hiring me, I just cost you an extra 2%, Jason? I think you need to take a look in the mirror, right? This is why if an agent came to me, I'm gonna say, open your checkbook. This is your problem, not your seller's problem, right? Any questions on that? We're gonna do training on it, run examples, and because I want you to be the smartest agent in the business.
So my question is, when you say they're offering, okay, our company's offering 2%, where are you gonna have that in writing that they're gonna
Great
do
question,
that?
because here's the problem. Right now, in MLS, if I put a number or a dollar amount in there and you sell my listing, that's an offer of compensation that I can't revoke if you're procuring costs.
Right.
I can't call up and say, oh, I really only wanted to pay you 1%. Right, I had 3 in there, I wanted to pay 1, typo, well, Greg, will you accept 2% less? And the answer is gonna be no, that's your problem. So now that it's not gonna be an MLS, which is a unilateral offer of compensation, it's gonna be someplace else. I think listing agents, and I think especially buyer's agents, are going to want to confirm the compensation up front. So Chad's going to start getting phone calls on his listings, right? Hey Chad, are you paying something? Yes, how much? I think as a buyer's agent, I'm going to send him an email. Dear Chad, it was nice talking to you 7 minutes ago at 11:57 on May 15th, 2024. Indeed, regarding the property at 1234 Main Street, you said that there was a listing broker offer of compensation to a buyer broker of 2%. Look forward to showing the house this afternoon. Please let me know if this information is incorrect. Now it's on Chad to say it was 1.5. And here's the problem, Chad, how many listings might you have at any given time?
4 or 5.
4 or 5. Okay, might you have different terms on each one of those listings? Hopefully the answer is no, I'm gonna keep doing my business the way I've been doing business. But can you imagine an agent that's offering different, do this here, my seller beat me up there, I'm doing something else, and they might quote you the wrong number. So that's why I say, as a buyer's agent, I would have clarified before I write my PA. Now, if it's on the MLS sheet, one could argue, Greg, you said it's 3%, right? So there's some wrinkles, and we're gonna try to stay on top of this and get training to you immediately. I mean, Olivia and Melissa and I have talked, I mean, if we have to do this weekly for the next 3 months, we'll do that. You'll get sick of me, but yes.
Email, is that legally binding? I mean.
Technically, no, but it's better than a conversation.
Or text.
But look, if you went to an arbitration committee and said, look, I sent Greg this email, confirming, he never responded, that wasn't the number. I think, Julie, your peers is gonna say, Greg, why didn't you respond back and say, no, it wasn't 3%, it was 2.5%. I'm so busy. Yes, sir.
I kind of going along with that, this PA is gonna go to your buyer. If Chad's offering 3%, Chad told me that, I might even have an email, I'm telling my buyer that they're giving 3%, but I'm putting 0 in there.
Yeah.
Well, and there might be times when you say, this system's untrustworthy enough, right? I mean, and again, there's 22,000 agents, there's over 1,000 different brokers, right? Do you think everybody runs a compliance shop like Melissa does here? Trust me, the answer to that is no, right? You're all independent contractors, you think you can do whatever you want, but my point is, you might be using every purchase agreement just to confirm it.
Do you put like in the notes area, like, this was what spoke about, at least it's on the actual purchase agreement?
Some of this is, look, this is all fresh.
I know.
We'll get back to you. Look, if I were a buyer or a buyer's agent worried about the person on the other end of the phone, that the seller chose to hire for, better or worse, I might use the terms of my PA to always include that. And look, could my buyer, could I and the buyer decline the seller's offer of compensation that was offered and only ask for it here? Yeah. It's something that they haven't talked about yet, but I'll probably be teaching that. Hey, if you want to confirm you're going to get your 3% in the PA, because we don't trust the guy on the other end for that number, or we have it right, then we'll, in our offer, the broker declines seller's offer of compensation through a listing broker of 2%, and then include this language. But we're working through all of those things. Yes, sir.
I think obviously, any new change creates confusion, we're all used to this, in a year or 2 years down the road, this will be normal, we'll all figure it out. Obviously, there's gonna be compensation back on MLS in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
The lawsuit is like a 7 or 8 year
7 or 8 years.
period of time that we've agreed to comply with these terms.
So we insert more insert attorneys, insert more documents, insert more confusion, turn the clock back 20 years. That's what I'm seeing happen, right? Okay, no worries, we'll get workarounds, we always do, that's how our business operates. That's how all business operates. It'll be fun, right? At the end of the day, we'll figure this out. However, I'm seeing a tremendous amount of confusion in this room. And what I'm seeing is, and yes, we're all gonna learn this, and I'm hearing what you're saying, Greg, and all this makes sense, and I already have workarounds in my head on how our team's gonna do it, and that's gonna be adopted by the brokerage. So it'll be fun. The reality is that if we're this confused, oh my gosh, can you imagine the buyers? The whole purpose of this was to disclose and to create less confusion. That's totally on one of the two.
I'm not worried about the buyers, I'm worried about 20,647 other agents that I won't be talking to.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, boy.
And you gotta work with them, that's the bad part.
We need to do disclosures, we need to do amendments to buyer brokers, we need to do buyer net sheets, because there's 10 scenarios that could hash out in this buyer situation.
Can you imagine being in a smaller brokerage?
No, not.
No, to be honest with you, I mean,
I'm now accepting all referrals for independent small brokerages.
Look, if you've been in the business more than 5 minutes, you have friends at all different sizes of brokerages, right? But can you imagine being at a brokerage that doesn't have a broker that's involved? I mean, Melissa's involved.
You just said a scenario, I gotta cut a check for 10 grand because I forgot to do 2%. That's a huge deal for most companies, most businesses, independent contract. So we gotta get this figured out, and I know you're doing a fantastic job, you always have. You and Melissa just rock, but thank you. I'm really not worried myself, but I'm going, oh my gosh.
Let me ask you a question, do you think there'll be less brokerages 2 years from now? Do you think there'll be less agents 2 years from now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
Right. I don't think it's gonna drop by a third like they say, but look, we don't like change. Well, I mean, when we changed the MLS display, you guys go into panic mode for 6 months, right?
Well, we're gonna have that workaround website on the backside,
Yeah.
it's gonna share all that.
We're gonna have solutions.
I still haven't recovered from the last time they changed it.
Steve's still using MLS books.
I'm about ready to drive up there and talk to those guys, because I pull statistics out of there every day, and it's like, how in the hell can that be?
The bad part, Steve's using MLS books. The good news is I'm selling him my old ones from 1997. I'm making money on the guy.
Will showing time be an option to do?
Nope, showing time is not an option to put in compensation, and do not get cute. Because I am concerned, you will be fined individually. And if enough of you in this room get fined individually, they think they're coming after me. No, and that's fair. If Melissa's not running a compliant shop, she has, she can't turn the other cheek. I mean, I was a little upset when one of my agents in Maple Grove goes, well, how do we work around this? You don't. There isn't one. And if you're going to do it, I can't let you do it under me knowingly. Look, the average commission is 10 grand. If I'm doing something non-compliant and breaks the law, how does that reflect on the rest of you? It's not good. Those dumb realtors, they can't even comply with the law that the lawsuit that was been publicized for 5 years. Okay, so if the average commission is 10 grand and Greg doesn't give a buyer, agency and a buyer rep agreement or a facilitator agreement soon enough, and Greg made 10 grand, how much should the fine be for Greg? I think it should be 12 grand. I think I should make no money on the deal and have to dig into my pocket for my learning lesson. Look, if I were smart and I'm not smart, I would quit what I'm doing, go to work for the law firm, find 5 of you every day that are not compliant, and fine you all 12 grand a day and negotiate with them to get half of it. And I'm not kidding. First I'll do it here, then I'll go to Chicago, right? Then I'll go to Hawaii first, and then San Diego, that's where my daughter is. I'm not staying here. So changes in the buyer rep contract.
Real quick, so, it's noon, so we got respective, some of y'all gotta go.
We're on 28, we're almost done. We got 31, 32 slides.
No, there's like 17 more. So I just wanna encourage you, write down your questions and ask him after so he can get through his slides. And of course, if you gotta go, you gotta go, but.
I'm planning on being here till 1. And again, this is recorded, the slides are available, so listen if you have to leave, I get it. I warned these guys that I like the yabber. Nothing in the buyer rep is changing. Zero, zilch. Use it how you're, go negotiate your commitment. The biggest thing is have an honest discussion with your buyer up front. This is what I believe I'm worth. Here's my value proposition, which you've given them first. And I've got some additional information I want to share with you guys, so we'll post it so it's available. Because how do I sell my value? Well, we're going to help you do that. But nothing's changing in the buyer rep agreement, other than you're going to probably have more fruitful conversations with people up front and sooner. So what if I don't comply? Well, here's what the attorney who started this lawsuit. Under the law, once the settlement is finally approved, anyone covered by this agreement, okay, so far any are settled on behalf of about 1+ million realtors. KW settled on behalf of its employees and agents. Anywhere, its employees and agents. RE/MAX, its employees and agents. There's a whole bunch of firms up and Home Services just recently. I mean, they paid almost
That'd be
3.5. They paid 3.5 times what Keller Williams paid. I mean, Gary got the sale price. He had a coupon or something. Because if you look at the number of agents,
he was the first one that settled.
if you look at the number of agents and the number of transactions, and come up with a formula for how KW paid out, everybody else overpaid, including RE/MAX Anywhere, Home Services, Compass. Right, so there's another range of brokerages that they're going after now, and there's a formula that they can buy themselves out of this lawsuit. Some of them don't have the money to do this. Some of them are family-owned businesses. I can't imagine that they've got $10 million tucked away in the bank to write a check for. So it's going to be interesting this next 60 days to see what happens. There'll be some mergers, there'll be some, right? Because I'd rather merge than go out of business and get something from, but anyway, so the attorney says, if we believe as class counsel that somebody is not abiding by the agreement, we can take appropriate steps. This is where Greg quit. If you see me quit and go to work for Catchmark, you better start doing everything right. That's my warning to you, okay? And if somebody else takes this idea, it's my $1 million idea, I get 20% from it, okay? So, meaning that they can pursue you individually, and MLS is also an enforcement action here. How many of you want your MLS access cut off? Because they found you were not compliant. I don't think any of us do, but there are teeth in this. How can I get paid? Because under the code of ethics, can I negotiate directly with the seller for my compensation? The answer is yes, you can. And we've done it for a while, but as an agent, I can't go to, for instance, let's say my buyer said Greg's worth 3%. I can't, and the listing broker's offering 2%. I can't go to the listing broker and say, hey, you and the seller should go renegotiate your PA so he tells you to pay me more. I can't, right? I can't do that. But in the purchase agreement now, there's a different way to work around for that. And remember, we've been using this language before, and we're gonna, between now and until the new changes in the purchase agreement and the listing contract kick in, if you're out showing properties now, because there are brokers taking listings with 0 offer to a buyer broker, right? No. Well, you and your buyer broker have an agreement. I don't want you to work for free. We can put this language into the PA moving forward until probably, I'm gonna guess, even writing purchase agreements into September. Because we're gonna have deals that we sell September 1st that aren't gonna close till November or December, and then the forms are gonna change in there, right? So what this says is, and this, the buyer directs you to do this because you had a 3% buyer rep agreement, they're offering 2.5, you wanna make up the missing half. The seller agrees to pay Keller Williams Preferred Realty 0.5% of the gross selling price at closing to fulfill buyer's obligation under their buyer rep agreement. Remember, you can't get paid more than what you negotiated for. So this, you'll be using this for brokers where you're showing and selling properties that do not match the compensation in your buyer rep agreement to make up the missing money, right? Question?
Until all these changes take place, are we able to just continue to count on the MLS as that was an offer?
If there is something in MLS, yeah. Now keep in mind, you could have shown my listing today and I offered 3% compensation, and then tomorrow my seller and I did a $10,000 price reduction, and my seller said, Greg, if I'm taking less, you're taking less. And I said, well, if I'm taking less, then I'm paying out less. So, make sure that you're looking at the current offer of compensation when you write an offer. Print out the sheet, right? And then, as you send over the purchase agreement, look at the commission, because it can't change now without me having a conversation with you. I don't get to call you up and say, hey, Brian, good news, we accepted your offer, but we dropped your compensation from what was on MLS. Yes, sir?
Kind of twofold question with that. So that, if you're doing 3%, they're offering 2, you just put 1 in this.
We put in the missing money.
Okay, so in the last couple of weeks, someone was paying out 2% per the MLS. I wrote in that they would be paying a total of 3% to the buyer side. I had better wording than that, but.
Actually, it's not better wording because this is the other wording is not good wording.
Right.
Somebody could find you in violation of Article 16 because you're using the terms of a PA to it. But anyway, this is the right stuff to use. You put in the missing money.
So in that case, it was 2% and obviously we signed at 3, let's say. So I needed that extra 1%.
This would have been a great place to put in 1% into the PA.
Okay.
Page 11, write that whole thing in.
Just so you know, that RE/MAX agent virtually told me I was completely wrong, that we couldn't ask for anything more.
This language is ethical, okay, because it's not asking the seller to pay me more, right? It's not asking the listing broker to pay me more. It's not asking the listing broker to go back to the seller to negotiate more for me. It's the buyer saying, here is my offer, here are my terms, which include additional compensation for the agent that represents me because I already pre-agreed to a fee with him.
Okay.
Okay.
The only thing I see shouldn't it say an additional 1%?
Nope.
No?
No, because they're already offering 2% on MLS.
No, I know.
No, you're not saying additional. That 2% is fixed. Mr. Seller, with this offer, you're agreeing to pay my buyer broker 1%.
When we no longer have the MLS and they've offered it someplace.
Well, that's why the new language in the PA will replace this. We won't use this next year. I'm gonna guess we're gonna use it between now and when the changes kick in.
And maybe I'm not understanding, but what if the seller doesn't agree to
Well, just like the buyer asks the seller to pay 2% closing costs, right? I reject that. So you'll have to, let's use the case where the seller says, look, I made the only offer I'm gonna make. I love your offer, right? And I'm gonna accept the other terms, but I'm countering this out. Then you go back to your buyer and go, the seller is not willing to pay the extra 0.5%. The buyer might go, well, I don't have it in my checkbook. And the buyer might go, well, instead of giving them $500, let's give them $2,000. So it's negotiations. I mean, the thing is, you and your buyer agreed on a fee up front, and you're entitled to everything in there. And hopefully you sold your value first so they don't question it, right? But that will continue to be used. What does it mean to be working with the buyer? This is the big thing, right? Because the language in the lawsuit now requires us to have an agreement in place before I show a house. So let me clarify first. Every listing in this office belongs to Melissa the broker in this office and all of you. So when when Chad goes and lists a property, you all right now are representing Chad's seller in that transaction. Okay, now keep in mind, you might have a buyer under a buyer rep agreement that works for, but you haven't matched them up, so we're not in a dual agency yet, right? So all of Chad's listings are all of ours. So if any of you are sitting on Chad's open house, right, whether it's Chad or one of you, you can have an open house, you can welcome the people in. I'm encouraging you to, nobody gets in unless they sign in, moving forward, and I'll tell you why in a minute, because I want to protect your commissions. So, you're all representing Chad's seller. A buyer could walk in and say, I just saw the signs. Hi, I'm Greg Hartos, never met him before, never going to see him again. When they walk in the door, I do not need to put them under a buyer rep agreement. It's our listing. So when Chad gets an internet lead this afternoon, and they say, Chad, I'd like to see your listing at 1234 Main Street, Chad says, great. Now, you should probably send them agency, or greet them outside the door and pop it on them, explain it, get them to sign it. So agency obligation there, whether we're showing somebody else's property or ours. We all good on that? It's not an option. Your backseat should be full of blank agency disclosures. Bring 2 with you, 1 for you, 1 for me. Please sign them both, right? They should leave with a copy. Now, when that buyer says, Chad, and while we're at 1234 Main Street, I noticed that Edina Realty has a house across the street. I'd like to see that one too. Chad goes, ugh. Well, to show my own listing or our own firm's listings, I do not need an agreement. But to show that MLS listing of another broker, now I need some kind of rate and agreement with that buyer. Okay? I don't care if it's a 1-day, a 1-address buyer rep agreement, if Chad wants to go into a dual agency on his own listing and represent them on the Edina one if they like that one. Or if Chad pops out a facilitator agreement, right, and fills in. But the thing to keep in mind is, whatever he fills in for compensation, that's what he's due. So if you say, well, I'm willing to show my listing and not have you sign a contract, but to show the one across the street as long as it's there, I'll do that for 1%, rather than you calling the Edina agent, right? Then 1% is all you're gonna get paid on that listing. So I would hesitate offering anything less than what your normal working fee is. We good on that? So we can show our own listings, we can welcome people in without a representation agreement. Any MLS listing, and that could be a builder's MLS listing. It could be basically a limited service broker, which is kind of like a FSBO that found a brokerage that will put it on list MLS. We need to have a written agreement with the buyer.
Builders reps can do the same thing, they're considered, assuming if they're licensed to a brokerage that represents that builder. That was my.
The larger builders all have their own brokerage, their own staff, right? But some builders do hire a real estate agent at a real estate company to do their stuff.
In which case, they need to have a buyer broker signed every time a buyer walks in those doors.
No, because they're the listing broker. The seller just happens to be a builder, right?
Got it.
But I'll give you an example. I got a builder, he's in a development, he's got 2 agents that whichever one of you guys is a better agent at the end of the year I'm gonna list with. So he's got one property listed with ABC and the next one XYZ. When this guy wants to show that one, he's gotta have an agreement. When this guy wants to show that one. It's rare, but that would be a requirement. So working with says basically, if I'm helping identify properties for you, I would argue if I'm gonna talk to a buyer and say, so tell me, hey, would you like to be on an MLS search and get listing? Yes. Hey, tell me what you need, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 3-car garage, whatever it is. I would argue once you start doing that, aren't you identifying properties for a buyer? You need to have an agreement. Arranging for the buyer to tour a property, whether in person or virtually, right? So if you've got a buyer that you're showing our friends at Edina Realty or Coldwell Bankers listing, and they say, hey, I can't make it to town, but can you do one of them walkthrough, go look at the 50 photos, go look at the virtual tour. If you want me to go and kind of do this throughout the house, I will, but I need to have a written agreement before I even do a virtual showing for them. If I'm doing like a buyer, if you guys were saying, I'm gonna do a buyer seminar this weekend to try to educate and pick up buyers, you don't need to have them under a buyer rep agreement. So if this Saturday you plan to do a 2-hour buyer rep, or buyer class in here, I would encourage you to have them all sign agency when they walk in the door, because people are gonna say, hey, I got $200,000 to put down and I can pay 400. It's like, yeah, I should have had you sign agency. So that's what working with is, okay? What does it mean to tour a house? And again, we already talked about that. A showing, a virtual showing, right? That's different than an open house where it's our listing. And by the way, we don't do open houses for other agents or other companies, right? And we don't allow anybody to have our houses open either. Because if you're doing that, A, I'm not gonna be happy with you, but B, it screws up what you have to do now to even show the house you're sitting in. So that's what touring a house means. And basically, it's 1 to 4 unit properties. So if I'm showing a triplex, a fourplex, these are the rules. Does the requirement written agreement with buyers mean that MLS participants and buyers must then do a written agency agreement? In Minnesota, we're only talking about Minnesota today. Agency disclosure always, and then either a buyer rep agreement, and again, it can be for 1 day, 1 month, 1 property, 1 zip code, or a facilitator agreement. Hey, I'll be happy to meet you at the house this afternoon. I'm gonna send over an agency and a buyer rep agreement. Well, I'm not signing a buyer rep agreement. Well, then I'll send you over a facilitator agreement. Now, that doesn't protect you, so I would not encourage your use. I'd rather have you sign 50 1 day, 1 address buyer rep agreements than anything else.
Have a question in regards to if you've got a buyer that you can sign under a buyer broker contract to pay your 3% and everything, and they've got the cash to do it. When you make the offer, can I make the offer for 3% and then let them know you don't have to pay me anything?
Can you let your buyer know that? Yeah, we're gonna put it right in.
Let the listing agent know that.
So hold on. The buyer says, I got enough cash in my pocket to pay your fee. I'm happy to do that. So when we write offers on properties,
right,
you're gonna say, my buyer's paying me direct. We're gonna decline the listing broker's offer of compensation if there is any.
Okay.
So now the confusing part is a listing agent, you've got 5 offers on a property. One where the buyer says, I'll take care of my own agent, but we've discounted the offer price, right? We've got another one where the agent says, well, I'll give you your list price, pay my agent and pay a little bit more. And we've got another one where, because this is where we're gonna flush out how much is the other agent getting paid.
Right.
Right? And by the way, we're not all equal. So that's, in Minnesota again, you're gonna have to put them under a buyer rep agreement or a facilitator. Now I get it, somebody's gonna call on your listing this afternoon, you're gonna go, hey, don't know if you knew about the lawsuit, new rules. You're gonna have to sign something before I drive to Farmington to show you the house, or you might drive to Farmington and before you let them in the door, say you gotta sign this. I'd encourage you to do it beforehand. I don't wanna drive to Farmington and find out they're not gonna show up because they won't sign the form. So here's the deal, they're gonna call you, and because you're gonna do it right, you're not gonna show the house until they sign. Now, if they find somebody else that will, well, they're a lawbreaker. I mean, hopefully things will catch up with them and they'll have that $12,000 fine and a $10,000 commission. So you gotta police yourself, and I know people will be breaking the rules. And it will only last for a little bit, because again, Greg's gonna quit his job and go do this. Because I think there's a ton of money in it. So, and again, we've had buyer broker agreements forever, so this is not new to you. What does it mean to be inconsistent with state or federal law or regulation? All MLS participants working with a buyer must have a written agreement prior to touring, unless state law requires it even earlier than that. Open houses, we can have our own open houses, and again, I'm gonna tell you, start collecting names. Everybody signs in or they don't come in. My sellers I'm the guardian of the house today, the sellers have instructed me, Brian, before I let anybody in, that they have to sign in. So Brian, I'm gonna stand here and watch you sign in, right? Name, address, phone number, are you under contract with another broker, and if so, what's his name, what's their company? Or they don't get in. Because you're gonna have people that are gonna run through your open house and go run back to another agent to write the deal. Well, who is procuring costs? You were. I don't wanna lose those. Sellers only agents, if you're only talking to a seller, then you don't need this new written agreement with them, right? I go to meet with a seller, I do a CMA, I get them under a listing contract. Working with buyers, Minnesota again, agency, buyer rep agreement or facilitator agreement, and we'll beat that into your head until it sticks. And then facilitator agreement. Dual agency, we can still do dual agency, both parties under contract. Minnesota requirements in a lawsuit, again, agency, buyer rep, or facilitator. Buyer compensation, can buyers and brokers agree to a range of compensation? No, it's a specific number, percentage or dollar amount. Amending buyer rep agreement, we already talked about that earlier. Can I change it? Yes, but before you write the deal, and make it sure it's only to that particular property. Anything else? MLSs will continue to have local discretion on seller concessions. And remember where I said we're not going to have it in our MLS, but we might add it later as we see how things play out. So that'll be a local decision. That's it. God, the guy can yap, can he?
That's pretty good.
Did you learn something? You should feel more comfortable, because in Minnesota, again, 85% of this, 90%. And I think we need to educate the people and let them know that, look, that lawsuit was mostly about how they were doing business in the rest of the country. Since 1992, we've been having buyer agreements. For the last 10 years, we've been disclosing to the seller, you're authorizing me to pay a cooperating broker, right? In our buyer rep agreements, the compensation's clear. So it's a little bit scary because it's new. I'll be sticking around. So if you have questions.
It was just as scary for people in 1992 because you had that big lawsuit with
Buyer representation.
Buyer representation, and everybody had to learn how to use a buyer broker contract because everybody represented the seller, so.
I've got a couple of articles that I'll make sure Jamie gets to get out to you, talking with buyers and sellers, and then how to sell your value proposition. Sorry it took so long.
No, get up here, get up here. First of all, we gotta, everyone get in the picture, come on. There's a
Hold on,
reason.
how's my hair look? My veins in my eyes?
There's a reason, come on, everybody. Awesome, all right. First of all, thank you, Greg.
Oh, you're welcome.
The reason I did that is because in June we're gonna be hyper-focusing on social media. I will tag as many of you that are my friends on Facebook. Please take pictures of situations like today. This is telling everybody in the world that you're a pro. Michelle had a call from an experienced agent the other day asking her what we're doing or what she's doing to stay ahead of this, because they're not doing it.
When they coming over, Michelle?
It's powerful. It's powerful, and we're like the Michael Jordan, but we also have a trampoline.
Can I be that ant guy, the younger guy?
You have your tongue hanging out like Michael. All right, so grab some cereal. At 12:30, we have a builder coming in about wealth building. That makes sense. So thank you all. Thank you, Greg.